What is the Monarch Mind Control Programming? It's the CIA's project to create childhood trauma in our society. A project that began after the Second World War together with MK Ultra. The Monarch Mind Control Project creates slaves undetectably. You're groomed and prepared to be a slave since the day you're born. Exposed to methods of hypnosis and torture that condition your subconscious mind to think and act in a specific way in order to avoid pain and punishment. The Monarch Mind Control Project robs you of your sense of identity and your own self-worth, so that you can always be codependent on others, specifically abusers and manipulators. The Monarch Mind Control Project, together with MK Ultra, explain why we live in a world full of child pornography, paedophiles, child trafficking, and inner child trauma. You're exposed to subliminal messaging from the day you're born, conditioned to hate yourself. Why is the world designed like that? If you hate yourself, you're more likely to compromise on your morals. But more importantly, you're easier to target, manipulate, and control. If you feel broken on the inside, you're more likely to spend your lifetime wasting it, looking for a cure outside of you, believing in the marketing messages that promise they can fix you, even though there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your programming. Hi, I'm Stella, writer and lightworker, here to inspire positive change. So let's talk about Monarch Mind Control Programming. It's the CIA's project to create childhood trauma, to disempower the children, because children are the future. And if you disempower the children, if you create childhood trauma from the day they're born, from their first 7 years, they're less likely to believe in themselves. And when you create this childhood trauma, you essentially send out a ripple effect of a message. Children are not really the future, when yes, they are. Because children are here to question us. Children are here to teach us. They are here to show us the new ways of doing things. And the way that the Monarch Mind Control Programming works is quite intricate, because there's lots of levels. As I said, it explains why we have so much child abuse and inner child healing, why we have child trafficking, why there's child pedophilia, and why is that being normalized as well. It's all for money. But let's look at the levels of Monarch Mind Control Programming, starting with the traditional family and how child abuse gets normalized within the traditional family. So essentially everyone has been exposed to this as part of their onboarding the first 7 years in order to create slaves to the system. So you have the family abuse, which is level 1, which is narcissism, emotional neglect, mental neglect, physical neglect, emotional and verbal abuse, sexual abuse in some cases, and complete emotional dysregulation. You're consistently being fed with the message, your feelings don't matter, your voice doesn't matter, listen to me, I know better, which again is essentially narcissism. There's no child that is born a narcissist. Narcissism is a condition that is developed as part of childhood trauma, as a result of the childhood trauma. Then you have school abuse, where you might experience bullying, competition, brainwashing, sexual abuse in some cases. Emotional dysregulation continues. Your feelings don't matter, your voice doesn't matter. It's consistently there, this idea that you are nobody and you should be like everybody else. And if you are different, then there's something wrong with you. And then you have the system abuse, which is a little bit more complicated in the sense that this is people acting out to the best of their knowledge. And I think a lot of it is happening without people understanding what's actually going on. But simply put, doctors are giving experimental or illegal drugs to kids, exposing them to hormonal therapy, and essentially doctors are doing anything they can do to kids with or without permission from their parents. Again, this is done in good faith. If your child is sick and you bring your child to a doctor, you expect that doctor to know more about the current state of the diseases and the current state of the cures available. And I don't think doctors actually want to create damage, but they are creating damage because they're part of a system that is fundamentally broken, and they are signing contracts with pharmacists that give them the drugs that are designed to further create damage within the immune system of children. Again, these pharmacists are being given these new experimental drugs as part of these health conventions and projects that, you know, it's always somebody higher than you in this scheme that is giving you, is feeding you, and just listening. But this is contributing to the system abuse, again, to the child abuse. And then you have societal abuse, which is the final level before you create a slave to the system, which is conforming to expectations, which essentially creates body dysphoria and a whole range of mental health issues, because children are conditioned to act and behave in a specific way that completely ignores their individuality. And this is done on purpose. This structure of trying to create child abuse is very successful because it relies on conformism, and a lot of people are conforming without questioning things. So the system is effective, but the system is broken. But once you've gone through all these four, and this is just the traditional family structure, so this is what we've all been exposed to, with or without realizing it, you have just created a person with childhood trauma, essentially a person whose inner child is trapped in them. So what you're seeing right now is a lot of adults that have adolescent consciousness because their inner child is trapped within them. They haven't done the work to heal their wounds. So you're seeing adults around the world trying to make these big decisions about the future, but they're operating from a level of consciousness that is very low in terms of how high it could be, because they are still children internally, and they're recreating the traumas based on their wounding. So these are adults who never grow up. These are adults suffering from the Peter Pan syndrome. These are adults operating on autopilot. And this is most of the adults you see in today's world. Adults that have not gone through their spiritual awakening, adults that are completely living in the false matrix, which is the matrix that is still within the programming, the mass messaging of conditional love, tough love. And once you've created this person with childhood trauma, which starts within the first 7 years, you proceed with the MK Ultra programming in the funnel of creating these slaves to the system. So you become a slave to the system. You continue to create childhood trauma when you're raising your own children. You give up on your own childhood dreams, and you give out this signal to the next generations. Yeah, dreams are for losers, essentially. You become resentful and never fulfill your potential. You never question the system, and as a result, you never bring change to the system, because you have these moments, these glimpses of, wait, this is wrong. But then you drink your poison, whether that's alcohol, whether that's drugs, and you forget about it. And that's a lot of people. They are asleep to their potential. They're asleep to the truth because they're consistently being distracted with alcohol, with reality TV, with junk food, and it's like our own bodies are festering with the poison that we're being fed, but we're too distracted to recognize it until it's too late, until the chronic conditions have been created. And this is just the traditional family structure. We then proceed to the irregular family or lack of family scenario, where I've used the word child trafficking versus child abuse, because it is child abuse. But I think when we leave the traditional family structure and we go into irregular families or lack of families, these are quite literally people, souls that have come here to be slaves to the elite players, or they are hijacked from the system to be slaves to the elite players. And again, think about Earth as a game, as a playing field, and don't think of the elites as some sort of masterminds. No, they're players that have been playing this game for a long time. They have generations after generations of reincarnations of coming back into the same structure so that they can continue to do the damage. Whereas people that come as part of the traditional families, they're here to learn, they're here to experience life, they're here to experience what it's like to be on earth, but they still get hijacked into the system because the system is so corrupted that it takes a lot of effort to wake up, to go through your spiritual awakening and go through all of this healing, go through all the shadow work and inner child healing to realize, whoa, have I been living in this lie all my life? Yes. Let's look at this one. Child trafficking, or the irregular family or lack of family conditioning so that you can become a slave to the elite players. And the first point here is abortion. Why do you think governments are so passionate, governments and religion, about keeping abortion illegal in so many parts of the world? It's not because they care about the kids. We have determined they do not care about the kids. If they cared about the kids, there would not be childhood trauma. There would not be a sense of disempowerment to the children. There will be acknowledgement that children are the future. No, these people do not care about the kids. They don't care about the life of the fetus, the quality of the life of the fetus. They care about the fetus itself. And there are many reasons that they care about the fetus. But the first stop is that the unwanted kids go into the system. There's nobody to claim them. There's nobody to help them during the onboarding years. If you are an orphan, you don't have the mother and father structure that would protect you, energetically speaking as well. So level 1 of orphanage is childhood trauma, childhood abuse. A lot easier to inflict childhood trauma and childhood abuse within the orphanage. Again, you don't have the guardians to protect you. And it's a lot easier to start a grooming process to hate yourself. If you hate yourself, you're easier to manipulate. And if you are abandoned, quite literally, you wake up every day and you think, I am abandoned. It's very easy to hate yourself. Why am I abandoned, right? These are the questions that go through the minds of orphans. And then we've got the next level, which is supply and demand, which is where most of the damage is done and where most of this particular clause is important. Abortion should be legal because we need the kids. We need the kids. Focus on that sentence. We need the kids. The society needs the kids because they need kids that would go into child trafficking. They need kids that would go into child pornography. They need children that would go into child slavery. Anything to supply the needs of the elite players, those who rule the world within the current structures, the current corruption. Again, this is a very broken matrix. Let's call it a matrix because it's a matrix of it's a formula. It's the current world and it's extremely broken. But let's say you have two pathways. You have the pathways of the traditional family of onboarding souls on earth, and they go as slaves to the system. And then you have the second pathway of onboarding children on earth, and this is the irregular family or the lack of family pathway. And this is kind of your destiny unless you escape the system, or there's all kinds of scenarios. We all have different learning paths on earth, but the idea is to advance society on earth. Evolution is the idea. It's not to remain where we are, but first we must acknowledge how bad the current situation is in order to fix it, resolve it, bring improvements to it. And then as part of the structure, you have mothers who need money. They sell their kids, so you might come from the traditional structure, but for some reason the mother did not have the means to raise you, so you go into the orphanage structure. And then you have this idea where if kids don't survive, the child trafficking, the child pornography, the child slavery, it's nothing to wallow about because they're still being useful. They go into organ harvesting. So there's a lot of money laundering, money profiting from the current societal structures that abuse children. And they start with the traditional family. Even the traditional family is being exposed to these. Kids are good for business, simply put. And this is why abortions being made illegal is good for business. It's not good for the parents, the mothers, those that would carry the children, but also those that would be responsible for onboarding the new souls, the new children. If anyone could have kids, you would almost have wild animals raising children. But it's not even that, it's children raising themselves using technology, using AI, using Netflix, using series online, using TV, which quite frankly, it has been happening. A lot of Matilda kids in our society today, because of the neglect that parents have provided, because of the neglect from the educational system that did not raise the parents how to be parents. It did not teach them in any way. And this is how we end up with kids are good for business. They are not corrupted, they are innocent, they have a vitality that can keep other players younger for longer. So the kids that don't survive the abuse, in whatever shape or form, they're used for organ harvesting. And there are certain kids that are being sacrificed on purpose for ritualistic abuse and demonic rituals. And when you read the PDF file of Monarch Mind Control, you understand that all of this that I've been talking about is not that crazy, and that those that are being called Illuminati, they have this as part of their rituals because they want to play the game. The Illuminati are not here to create some sort of, post-punk world that's funky and it's cool. And in one of their videos, if you research on YouTube, it's being said that Illuminati want to create the new heaven. Yes, they do want to create the new heaven, but that heaven is not for everyone. That new heaven is for the chosen families within the game. It's not chosen by God, not chosen by a higher power. They are self-proclaimed purebreds that do these ritualistic abuse and demonic rituals in order to clean the earth from the trauma that they created, because they want to keep creating the trauma. They want to keep profiting from this. They want to destroy the innocence of the earth. They want to destroy the children. They don't want a future where children are the future, simply put. And this is where we end up to the point where if we already have this business structure, it is a business structure, it's money laundering, money profiting. If you already have this structure with child trafficking, child pornography, child slavery, if you already have this pathway, so you have the traditional family and you have this pathway of the irregular family or lack of family where you become a slave to the elite players, why are there still people being targeted that are not part of this? If you already have the structure for child trafficking, why are innocent, I mean, everyone is innocent, but why are still people from the traditional families being targeted? And I'm talking about girls being kidnapped, their drinks being spiked, they're being rapes and all that. Use your imagination. And the analogy I got for that was, imagine you were a hunter and you were taken to a restricted area, like the zoo, and you were told you can have anything for dinner. Choose it and shoot it. But these animals are drugged. These animals are weak. They're tired. They have been enslaved for a while now. And they're easy targets. They're not going to put up a fight. They know the deal. If you've been abusing an animal for a while, they know the deal. It's the same for abuse victims. After a while, it's just not easy. It's just not interesting. They're easy. They have been conditioned, right? So it's too easy for the experienced hunter who's hungry for the chase. Remember, it's the primitive brain, it's the reptilian brain. It's the same logic for the hunters in our society. They've created these structures where there's already money laundering, child trafficking, child pedophilia, child pornography, the dark web. They're hungry for more. Do you understand the type of addiction that becomes out of this? So they're eager for the chase, which is why they attack where they shouldn't be attacking, which is why they have now crossed the line of corruption on earth, which is why we need to wake up and bring the positive change. This is anything to supply the needs of the elite players, which is where we go into the Illuminati network for sex services or sex kittens, which is the Monarch Mind Control idea of Westworld, where girls and women are raised to be, they're just to satisfy the needs of men and women. it's not just men. I'm just saying that the sexualization of girls and women has been a lot bigger of a campaign than when it comes to boys. Doesn't mean that there aren't boys and men abuse, doesn't mean that there aren't women in power who do the same, but the ratio is still more towards women. Women are still being more sexually objectified and sexually abused than men. And orphan kids and women are just not good enough for the elite players. They have a specific set of requirements, and they must come from a good family. We'll pay good for the quality, right? So this is how you start to see the Illuminati network bleeding into the everyday society, and how you get people to agree to join, how you get people to agree to manipulate, brainwash, control, use dark psychology, and become handlers, essentially. How you get the average man to sell his daughter or even son to an organization for money. Brainwashing. So this is why you have kidnapped children, you have the spiked drinks, and you have raped women. And this is where, where you kidnap an orphan, nobody really bats an eye because there's no guardian. There are structures, there are guardians within the systems, but there aren't guardians the way that a mother and a father would protect their child. So when you have a kidnapped child, you see a lot of press around that, even though there's so many children that are just being abused, trafficked, raped, and God knows only what on a daily basis. But when the attack happens in a traditional family, that's when you see or hear the uproar in society. That's why we have these the press around kidnapped children, spiked drinks, and raped women, because those that are currently benefiting from the structures in society that are there, let's not pretend that they're not there. They're now attacking where they shouldn't be attacking, even though they should never have had these structures in the first place. But that's a whole different discussion. So you get this sense of entitlement over the independent spirit of women, and you have this sense of control that brings arousal to boys and men that has been instilled in them since childhood on purpose. And MK Ultra helps to create that sense of control to the everyday players as well. So we're seeing a total corruption of the everyday person. We're seeing a total corruption of the traditional family as well, while those on top are glorified as the pure families. The families who inflict all the pain, all the trauma, all the abuse, and all the controlling policies. And this should be scary to you. If this isn't scary to you, I don't think, you have experienced any of this firsthand. But I think everyone has gone through this abuse. And when I say abuse, I don't necessarily always mean physical abuse. I'm talking about mental abuse, where your ideas have been suppressed, where your sense of expression was suppressed. I'm talking about emotional abuse, where you were gaslighted by your own family, by your friends and neighbors, and spiritual abuse, where you were almost called out for being a liar when you saw certain patterns around you that were happening, but people didn't want you to see them, because everyone has these momentary connections to their higher self. I know I've been awakened since I was a young kid, 5-year-old, on and off. So I was awakened in moments where I had to witness what was happening before my eyes and then put back to sleep, so to speak. But if this has happened to me, then this has happened to other people. So what you've seen is the truth. It's just that you don't want to remember it. It's as simple as that. Because all of this is bad. All of this is awful. And I think this is part of the reason why people don't speak about this, is because if they were to acknowledge this is actually happening, they would need to face a lot of ugliness that they have experienced themselves and they have contributed to themselves. But if this doesn't scare you, it's your children that are going to fix this mess. You might not want to help bring positive change. It's going to be your kids that are going to fix this mess. And in the process of you not wanting to take accountability, you're going to continue to create slaves to the system. You're going to continue to inflict childhood trauma on your own kids because you're refusing to grow up, essentially, and see the truth and take accountability for what you can do in your community. And finally, we are reaching the MK Ultra programming. I'll do a separate video on this because it's very big in terms of MK Ultra programming is essentially being described as this mind control where people go into your brain. That was the initial experiment that the CIA did. Then they used the findings to create this structure. So MK Ultra programming helps to create the child pedophilia around all around us, essentially. They're trying to normalize it with the hypersexualization of content in entertainment. So music videos are the biggest example. Just look at the videos, listen to the lyrics. They're talking about baby boys and baby girls and girlfriends and boyfriends. I'm gonna make you cry like a baby. If you don't think this is referring to child abuse and underage sexual performance, not the best way to put it, but the language reveals, the language explains, and the language is not innocent, and there are consequences to every single action, but people are just too asleep from the mass hypnosis to recognize it. And if the hypersexualization does not scare you, there is a kind of this idea to lower the legal age for sexual consent and alcohol consumption and drug consumption all around the world in different governments. And there are two sides to this. On the one hand, if you lower the legal age, you make it less exciting. So if something is forbidden, it almost makes it more exciting. But again, you have to ask yourself, is this the idea that every brain thinks like that, or is this part of our conditioning that because it's forbidden it's more exciting? Who made you believe that because something is forbidden it's more exciting? If you were a child and you touched the oven and somebody told you that's forbidden and you burn yourself, you're not going to want to do it. But when you create this idea of something being forbidden that gives you a rush, you want to do it again. I think this is where the danger comes. If you find that what's forbidden is hurting you, you're not going to repeat it. But if you find that what's forbidden is giving you pleasure, you're going to want to do it. But the danger is that alcohol is poison. The danger is that young children being groomed to want to have sexual desires before their time is grooming them to be victims. That's the real danger. And this is where we enter the monarch conditioning among families that I mentioned briefly. This is where families agree to give their children to the Illuminati network, so to speak. There might be other names. I'm just using the name Illuminati because it's easier. Any Illuminatis that are part of this network, if I've wrongly used your name, if you want another name to be used, please correct me. But yeah, this is where we enter the corruption of the traditional family, where families are being bribed to give their children to this prestigious network, which, by the way, has links to higher education as well, not just education, where, yeah, it's all about money. It's all about money. So you have these secret societies that fit perfectly within the selective programming to create substructures within the existing structures in society and groom victims to be the femme fatales, trophy wives, and every other trope that you can think of that tries to fit your whole identity within a single label. And the final bit of this is still MK Ultra programming, combined with Monarch Mind Control Programming. You finally get this sex tapes and rise of pornography for money and fame, which is, the two big signs of success in today's society are money and fame. This is the false programming, the false matrix. But think about all the recording devices we all have, which makes this even easier to accomplish today. Pornography. And pornography of the people we know. Anyone can take a photo of you or even a whole video without you knowing. Anyone can purchase a hidden camera and install it in your house without you knowing. Mobile apps are tracking your location, saving all of your data and footage, even if you delete it. And this is even before we go into the dark web, where you probably already have some sort of digital footprint without you knowing. And this is the society we live in today, a society of mind control programming and MK Ultra programming. And this is what the elites and CIA doesn't want you to know. And quite frankly, it's awful. This is absolutely disgusting on all levels. The only way to stomach all of this information is to think of life as a game. It's the only way that you can ascend spiritually. It's the only way that you can go through analyzing your childhood trauma and making sense of it. You came here to accomplish something. This is the system's way to try and stop you by creating these narratives where your innocence is completely destroyed, or the innocence of those that you know. And it's up to us to save this world. It's up to us to stop this. It's up to us to embrace the truth for what it is, the truth, and stop running away from it, because children are the future, and it doesn't matter how many generations are gonna go through this shitstorm, the children will remain the future. And if you don't think they're higher powers than the current players on Earth, you are mistaken. But it's up to us to rise up spiritually, ascend spiritually, and bring the change, because Earth is also a school, and we volunteered to become the ascended masters who can ground the change. And now is the time for positive change.